If you don't leave this auditorium this evening with a changed mind about networking and networks, I will have failed. So metaphorically, my job is to prod you with a stick and give you some insights. And to do this, I would point out that there's a possible subtitle to this talk, and that is When the Machines Come to Our Rescue. To get this started, I need to posit with you a few suppositions and things that I think are absolutely axiomatic. And so here we go. As human beings, we build systems top down. They're extremely complex and they do unbelievably simple things. In contrast, Mother Nature builds unbelievably simple things that complete unbelievably complex tasks. And we're coming together from those two directions. And we happen to be, as a species now, the limiters of progress. 20 years ago, we were waiting for the technology. Now the technology is waiting for us. Things that we developed 15 years ago for the medical profession have still not been adopted. And that is true universally. So, first provocation. No individual can ever understand these, nor these. This nematode on my far right, your far left, has got 11 neurons. A team at Cambridge University spent 3 years mapping the brain of that nematode, and it was a little bit like getting a map of the UK and then trying to infer what the society did. There is not a hope that without some very clever technology, we will be able to understand ourselves. Without technology, we would know nothing, relatively speaking. And it remains quite a challenge. Everybody is now online, no exceptions. If somebody is not online, it's because they choose not to be. The technology is so cheap. Even if you buy it new, it's cheap. If you buy it second-hand, it's throwaway. Getting online is a trivial matter, and there's no excuse when people say they can't get online. If you look at the world population, you find over 4 billion people now have mobile phones, and over 50% of those phones are internet ready. So the dominant browsers, if you like, are actually on mobile devices rather than fixed. So very shortly, everything will be online, including all our domestic appliances, all our office machinery, and things like automobiles, as we just heard. Now, there's some fundamental problems. First of all, we're linear thinkers. We're not educated in or learn to think in a non-linear way, and yet the universe, the world in we live in, is fundamentally non-linear. This shows up nicely with the banking crash, out-of-control governments, things that don't work too well. And here's how it occurs. We're all educated and spoilt rotten on a diet of problems that have solutions. University professors and teachers like that because you can assess people. And you get this false image that we know more or less everything, and there is a corner of knowledge where there is an unknown. In later life, what we discover, unfortunately, is that most of the things are unknown, and we've been educated in this very small corner of what we can cope with. So even simple things like ballistics that we deal with, if you like, with linear models from Newton, we later find that when we get into electronics, we have to use nonlinear thermal mechanic models to actually compute where projectiles go. So another supposition for you, and I think it's absolutely obvious that there is no human leader, past, present, or future, who has the ability to manage this complex planet. Not a chance. There are no scientists either. There are no polymaths anymore. No one can get their brain around everything, and it's becoming increasingly difficult. So I rail against these one-line solutions our politicians and bankers roll out because there are lots of solutions to problems that are very, very simple, but they're always wrong. Sooner or later, they go badly wrong. And single-issue thinking is now highly dangerous. What could be simpler than breaking up a company? Over 20 years ago, Judge Green decided that he would break up the mighty AT&T in the US. Just watch what happened.
Meanwhile, big news in the telecom industry. Cingular is changing its name to AT&T. It is a crushing blow to those of us who have come to love the Cingular trademark, whatever the hell that is. As you no doubt remember, Cingular was co-owned by Bell South and SBC, which had been Southwestern Bell and Ameritech, which before that had been Illinois Bell, Wisconsin Bell, Michigan Bell, Ohio Bell, and Indiana Bell. All of those used to be AT&T. A couple of years ago, Cingular bought AT&T Wireless and renamed it Cingular, but then SBC bought AT&T and changed its own name to AT&T. Then that new AT&T bought Bell South, changing its name to AT&T, making it only logical to turn Cingular into AT&T. And down here, too. In other words, thanks to America's antitrust efforts, the country has gone from this to this. Yes. AT&T is the T-1000 of corporations. No matter how many pieces you break it into, it always comes back together.
That's incredibly funny, but that little 20-year dance cost well over $100 billion. Just think what you could have done with $100 billion. Good mistake. Here's the problem in a nutshell. People look at problems through a microscope or a soda straw. They take a very narrow view. We've got to start taking a much wider view. And if you look in new directions, very often you can see new opportunities. If the person next to you isn't laughing, point out why they should be, okay? The whole of our society has become totally obsessed by risk. You go to companies and you find the risk assessment department, and then you find the opportunity analysis department. And this is a real problem. Okay, so let's have a look at a simulation example. And this is an example of a networked problem. This is a pandemic spreading across the United States. What the politicians don't ask is the right question. They say, how many people can we save? The right question is, how many people in General Electric do you have to kill or let die to completely collapse the company? That's the right question to ask, because what you're looking at is the survival of a complete nation. So you must identify those people who must not be allowed to die. So let's get on with a few bits I want to show you about big changes. Here's society. Here are the networks. This is not a scalable network for a large society. The connectivity grows with the number, but you can't talk to everybody. You're limited to a few hundred or 1,000 people. The information society is entirely different. The telephone gives you a power law that says double the number of people, you get 4 times the number of connections. The internet is the first exponential network we've had our hands on. And the fun thing is, it gets much worse when it starts to move. And now it does move, because we are carrying the devices. That makes the network an entirely different beast to the ones we've seen in the past. And we're heading towards a semantic society where the knowledge is gathered on the edge, and we're already part of it with social networking. We start to share information. And so if you go to old managers, they try to corral information to be powerful. If you go to young people, they try to share everything to become influential. And that's the big difference.